Long before the Fulani would set their sights on the rich lands of northern Nigeria, the Hausa city-states flourished across the Savannah and Sahel. These kingdoms, such as Kano, Katsina, Zaria, and Gobir, were vibrant centers of commerce, culture, and political power. Their bustling markets thrived on trans-Saharan trade routes, where gold, salt, leather, and textiles passed hands, weaving a network of wealth that extended beyond Africa's borders. The Hausa people had established complex political systems with emirs and kings who ruled through intricate alliances and traditional customs. Each city-state was fiercely independent, proud of its heritage, and protective of its sovereignty. Their cities were hubs of Islamic scholarship and indigenous traditions, blending faith and culture in a delicate balance. Yet beneath this prosperity, fissures began to appear. Rivalries simmered between states, and social divisions widened. The ruling elite often struggled to maintain control over the diverse populations within their borders. Religious reforms were debated in mosques, and whispers of change echoed in the streets. As the 18th century progressed, a storm was brewing, one that would sweep across these kingdoms with unprecedented force. The stage was set for an upheaval that no one could have predicted, a collision of faith, power, and identity that would shake the very foundations of Hausa society. In the shadows, the Fulani, a nomadic people with a growing sense of purpose and a fierce dedication to Islam, watched and waited. Their moment was coming, and when it arrived, it would ignite a conflict destined to rewrite history. The Fulani, also known as the Fulbi, were once primarily nomadic pastoralists roaming vast stretches of West Africa. Their lives were tied to the rhythms of the seasons, herding cattle across savannas and grasslands. Yet beneath this seemingly peaceful existence simmered a growing ambition fueled by deep religious conviction and a desire for political influence. Unlike the settled Hausa, the Fulani lived on the fringes, often marginalized and scattered in small communities. But they shared a strong Islamic identity, one that increasingly shaped their worldview and aspirations. Education in Quranic schools spread through their ranks, and with it, a powerful sense of purpose began to take hold. Over time, many Fulani began to reject the syncretic religious practices they saw among some Hausa rulers, whom they accused of straying from pure Islam. This religious zeal would soon become the driving force behind their transformation, from simple pastoralists into organized warriors and political actors. Armed with conviction and growing military strength, the Fulani began to push into territories controlled by the Hausa city-states. They forged alliances, built networks, and mobilized support, setting the stage for a dramatic upheaval. Their movement was more than a military campaign. It was a quest to purify Islam and reshape the social order. The question hanging over the region was simple, yet terrifying. Could the Hausa kingdoms withstand this rising tide of faith-fueled ambition? The answer would come through fire and blood as the Fulani prepared to challenge the old order. In the early 19th century, a figure emerged who would become the catalyst for an unstoppable wave of change: Usman Dan Fodio. A scholar, preacher, and reformer, Dan Fodio combined religious fervor with keen political insight. His sermons resonated deeply with both the Fulani and marginalized Hausa communities disillusioned with the ruling elites. Dan Fodio's message was clear and uncompromising, a call to purify Islam and to overthrow rulers who had strayed from true faith. His vision was not merely spiritual reform, it was a rallying cry for political revolution. He denounced corruption, social injustice, and what he saw as the moral decay within the Hausa kingdoms. His charisma and scholarship attracted thousands, uniting disaffected groups under the banner of Jihad, a holy struggle to restore Islamic order. This wasn't just a war of conquest. It was portrayed as a sacred duty, a divine mission sanctioned by God. The ruling Hausa elites, confident in their power, initially dismissed Dan Fodio as a troublemaker, but as his following grew, so did the threat he posed. Rebellion ignited across the region, battles erupted, and cities once thought impregnable faced siege. The Fulani Jihad under Dan Fodio's leadership was no ordinary uprising. It was a force that would topple kingdoms, redraw borders, and reshape the spiritual and political landscape of northern Nigeria forever. The air was thick with tension as the Fulani forces, inspired by Usman Dan Fodio's call, marched toward the heart of Hausa power. What began as scattered uprisings soon turned into coordinated assaults on city after city. The Hausa kingdoms, though rich and fortified, were unprepared for the ferocity and religious zeal driving the Fulani warriors. Kano, one of the richest Hausa states, became a critical battleground. Fierce clashes erupted in its streets, where old alliances were tested and new loyalties forged in the heat of war. The Fulani employed not just military might, but cunning strategy, leveraging discontent among local populations who viewed the ruling elites as corrupt and oppressive. Resistance was fierce and desperate. The Hausa emirs rallied their forces, fighting not only for territory, but for their very survival and way of life. Yet, with every battle, the Fulani gained ground, their momentum seeming unstoppable. The siege of Katsina, the defense of Zaria, and the fall of Gobir became chapters in a rapidly unfolding saga of conquest. The balance of power shifted rapidly as entire regions fell under Fulani control. Cities that had flourished for centuries now faced a new order, one forged in the fires of jihad and political revolution. The question on everyone's lips was no longer who would win, but what kind of future awaited the conquered. In the midst of this chaos, Usman Dan Fodio's vision took shape, a caliphate that would unify the Fulani and Hausa under a single Islamic state, guided by strict religious principles. The conquest was more than land. It was the birth of a new political and spiritual order that would endure for generations. With the fall of key Hausa cities, Usman Dan Fodio and his followers set about forging a new empire, the Sokoto Caliphate. This was no mere conquest. It was the establishment of a theocratic state ruled by Islamic law, designed to unify diverse peoples under a shared religious and political framework. The Caliphate's administration was revolutionary for its time. Dan Fodio appointed emirs loyal to the cause to govern former Hausa territories, creating a centralized system that balanced religious authority with pragmatic governance. Islamic courts, schools, and mosques flourished, spreading the reformist vision across the region. But the transition was not without challenges. Many indigenous groups struggled to adapt to the new order, and pockets of resistance continued to flare. The Caliphate had to balance military strength with diplomacy, incorporating diverse ethnic and cultural groups into its fold. Economically, the Sokoto Caliphate revitalized trade networks and agricultural production, leveraging the wealth of the Hausa lands. However, the consolidation of power also sowed seeds of tension, as traditional elites found their influence diminished under the new regime. As the Caliphate expanded, it became one of the largest and most powerful states in West Africa. Its influence extended far beyond conquest, shaping religious practices, social structures, and the political landscape of the region for decades to come. With the Sokoto Caliphate firmly established, the Fulani did not rest. Their ambitions stretched beyond the conquered Hausa lands, reaching into territories inhabited by other indigenous peoples. The quest for expansion was relentless, a drive to spread Islamic governance and secure control over fertile lands and strategic trade routes. But expansion was met with fierce resistance. Many indigenous groups refused to bow to the new caliphate, defending their homelands with determination. These confrontations sparked brutal skirmishes and prolonged sieges, where the Fulani faced not just warriors, but deeply rooted cultural identities. The caliphate's leaders had to navigate a complex web of alliances and rivalries, using diplomacy and sometimes force to incorporate diverse communities. In some areas, conversion and integration were gradual. In others, conflict left scars that would endure for generations. This period of expansion was marked by uncertainty and tension. The Fulani sought to impose a unified Islamic order, but the patchwork of peoples and loyalties complicated their vision. The dream of a cohesive empire clashed with the reality of resistance and cultural diversity. As battles raged and alliances shifted, the future of the region hung in the balance. Would the Sokoto Caliphate succeed in uniting these lands under its banner, or would the forces of resistance carve out their own destinies? The Fulani Invasion and the rise of the Sokoto Caliphate left an indelible mark on the history and identity of northern Nigeria. The political and religious transformations from that era continue to resonate, influencing the region's governance, culture, and social fabric to this day. The Caliphate's establishment introduced Islamic law and education on a wide scale, creating institutions and traditions that persist in many communities. The legacy of Usman Dan Fodio's Jihad is remembered both as a religious reform movement and as a foundational moment for modern northern Nigerian identity. However, the conquest also sowed seeds of tension and division. The conflicts between Fulani rulers and indigenous groups shaped long-term ethnic and religious dynamics. These historical struggles sometimes echo in contemporary disputes, making the past a living, often contested memory. Despite the conflicts, the blending of cultures under the caliphate created a rich and diverse society. Trade, scholarship, and art flourished, linking northern Nigeria to broader Islamic and African worlds. As Nigeria moves forward, understanding this turbulent past is crucial. The story of the Fulani Invasion is not just about conquest. It is about transformation, resilience, and the complex interplay of faith, power, and identity. The echoes of this epic chapter still shape the land and its people, reminding us that history is never truly behind us. It lives in the present, guiding the future. If you found this exploration compelling, please like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into Africa's fascinating history. The past is alive. Let's uncover it together.